Welcome to Get Big Out Loud Radio, where we explore living the complex, funny, and beautiful ride of life with me, Kari Knutson, and Dr. Pat on transformationtalkradio.com. Are your thoughts keeping you small? Are you ready to get big? I will offer you ideas to transform what you are thinking into conscious action. Explore what is keeping you small and how to shift your behaviors in order to get big. Learn what is possible for you. Get ready to get big and live life out loud starting now.
Loud with me, Dr. Pat, and the most amazing Kari Knutson. I love the title of this episode. Kari's going to tell you a little bit about what this is about. It's simply 2 words. What now? I love that we're talking about this in the wake of the election. And it's so interesting to have this conversation. Kari, you know, out of all the things you do, I'm sure you are a coach, you're a counselor, you're so many things, you're out in the world, but very few people are really talking about what now. And a lot of times we just want to forget. But what made you pick this topic for today? What put the burr under your saddle?
Right. Well, I felt like every time we do a podcast, it's timely. It's what I'm thinking about. It's what people are talking about. And I feel this is really important in the wake of the election. A lot of people are asking, what now? And it's caused so much division and rhetoric, and all the things that have come up about it has stirred up so much emotion for a lot of people, one way or another. And it just feels like both kinds of emotions are like dividing us even more and more instead of bringing us together. And I felt like the idea of what now is like, okay, what do we do now that we've essentially survived the election cycle? And then we're left with a lot of feelings. And I wanted to be able to use this platform as a way to tease apart, like for those people, myself included, who are trying to figure, okay, now what now? What are the next steps? What do we do to move forward? How is the country moving forward? In what ways will we change? And so that's why I titled it What Now, because that was the question on my mind.
Well, let's start with the beginning. And, you know, what's the most important thing for people to acknowledge?
I feel like when we're thinking about this, especially because we've just gone through the election cycle with a lot of emotions, and then the election results cause a lot of emotions. And so the primary thing that I feel like people should do is just at least acknowledge emotions without judgment and without kind of second guessing yourself and without explaining it away. And again, I feel like I have to talk to people essentially on both sides to say, like, some people were really thrilled and some people were really devastated, and to think about the people who are not okay right now, and to think about the people who need to like acknowledge a full range of emotions. It's so important, because when we stop emotions, deny them, but push them away, or don't recognize their importance, what I find is that they come up later at the most inconvenient time. So let's say you're angry about something and you're not really processing your anger. It comes up at the most inconvenient time, like when you're driving or having a conversation with your boss, or trying to figure out your taxes and it seems unfair. And all of a sudden it exacerbates what the initial emotion was. And same with sadness. Like if you don't accept, understand, or at least bring up that you're sad, it tends to come up in the strangest ways when I call it like an indirect action. So you might be feeling sadness, you deny that, something else comes up. Let's say a friend cancels lunch, or you don't get that proposal that you put in for, and all of a sudden it feels like crushing. And your sadness comes up in another way. So I just want to encourage everyone to think about the very first thing is whatever you're feeling, and even if those feelings to you, it's not okay. It's okay not to be okay. It's and the whole idea of feelings just they exist in the world to be felt and experienced. And what we do with them is the next step. But the first thing is you get to feel all your feels, whatever they are, you get to have them.
And I think what we're dealing with here is, you know, we're dealing with not just the reality of fear, like real fear. So what's a real fear? Let's talk about a real fear, right? What would be a real fear? Well, a real fear right now for people, especially seniors, is cutting Medicare and Social Security. So that's a real fear. And so we want to look at what do we do with those fears? What do we do with that emotion? For a massive amount of people, that is a non-negotiable, you got to be kidding me kind of thing, right? And
Hmm.
so part of this is to experience that, but we're really going beyond that now. We're not just experiencing the emotion. It really is taking a lot of people down. Do you know what I
Oh,
mean? Yeah,
and understandably so. That's why I wanted to talk about understandably so. Anyone who you would consider in a protected class or another group of people, we're like,
yeah,
we know what it was like under the first time
yep,
of the presidency. Now we're like looking at a second time, and people who are genuinely fearful, like people in the LGBTQ community, Black people, women, and people of color, immigrants, like anyone essentially who knows what could be in store for them,
yep,
seniors, like to me, it is worth talking about because the fear is not just
yeah,
made up. It's like it's kind of like if we don't have amnesia from what happened the first time, and people are these fears are really real. And what the hard part is when you have these fears and then they can't go anywhere because it's in the realm of what we can control and what we can't. And right now there's so many what ifs and how whatever, and sometimes what happens with that is we ramp ourselves up into the what might be category, like what if it works, what if it doesn't, what if it happens, what if it doesn't, and the spiraling around that can cause so much stress that it really is hard then to make like essentially reasonable next step forward or to figure out what will work for
yeah,
you because you're such a heightened state of something that hasn't happened yet, and that future thinking can really be damaging because again it takes you out of the present and it's totally out of your
mhm,
control. So one of the things you have to think going back is naming your fears, talking about them, labeling them, all that, and then deciding for yourself how much of your brain capacity can you spend worrying
yeah,
about something that first of all hasn't happened yet and is out of your control. So the other thing is like, okay, what is in my control and what do I need to do to stymie my fears about this before I let myself just spiral. And again, a lot of people, rightfully so, have to have their spiral moments. So my idea is like if you are one of those people that's spiraling, and understandably so, your mental health, in order to move forward, we can't compromise your mental health, and
no,
we can't
no,
compromise your ability to be in the present and to also then take appropriate action
yeah,
towards whatever's next. But people in hyper arousal spiraling mode, you can't make rational
mhm,
decisions, and then you just kind of scare yourself. I feel like it's watching like a scary movie where you know something is going to happen but you don't know when. So have
yeah,
you ever felt like you watch a scary movie and the whole time the movie's on, from the minute the scary music starts to play,
yeah.
you're like wondering when the thing is going to, and so your body is the whole time you're watching that movie is at a heightened state of anticipation. And maybe that's okay for like an hour and a half movie, but we
Yeah,
can't do that for like months and months and months.
it's so true. You know, it's fascinating because I posted on a post the other day regarding Jill Stein, who the European Green Party asked her not to run. And so there's this interesting post that's going on with her, albeit really not headlines. It's just like a little chit chat between people saying, Jill, you know, please really reconsider what you're doing. Now, everybody has in this country, you have the right to run. And so it's fascinating when you look at that, how many people are looking at her and saying, this is not even true, but saying if you didn't run, the election would be different. Now, do we know that to be true? Well, you look at some of the numbers, but see, people are trying to find a way to either change something, prevent something, or understand something. And I
Mm.
think that's what we're talking about today, but we must connect with support groups. Whether you're going to email Jill Stein or you're not, or you're going to email the Libertarian Party or not, there's something that you need to do to connect with people that are going to help you with your mental health. And
Mhm.
this is the difference between becoming an activist now, which I'm not discouraging you, and getting immersed in an obsession that takes you down every day where you can't sleep at night. And I think that's part of it. You can still be active, You can still say what you want to say, but what are you doing to put your mask on, your oxygen mask on first? And I think that's what this show is about.
Definitely. And the idea of what next for me, what next for you, what next for our communities and our country and the world. Like we've just been through a kind of psychological stress and then trauma for lots of people.
Yes.
And again, rightfully so. People are right to be scared. People are right to be upset. Like, and it's not to me just a matter of like win or lose. I think it's deeper than that because we know what's at stake with people's human rights and how a first Trump term, like what played out, and now what we can expect in the second one. And people need to be able to talk about that, connect about it. And my concern is that in order to be able to survive this next period of for what a lot of people mentally are facing is that they have to take care of their mental health in order to be able to move forward. And that is the part I'm so concerned about is like, can we like you said, essentially put our masks on, feel like, well, what do we need to do? And I want to also say that sometimes the idea of like, I have to do something right now, sometimes it's like, I have to just be something right now. And right now, what am I being? Like, what's happening to me? What do I need? And again, so like too much in the past, too much in the future, too much either like just like, oh, dread or too much spiraling. Those two things keep us out of the present moment. And the power really of action is always in the present. It is
Yeah.
always in the present. The power to move, to think, to do is always in the present. And that's why I really want to think about when people find themselves either going back or going forward in a way that just feels so stressful. Like, how can we center ourselves in the middle of the present moment so that we can
Yeah.
safeguard our mental health for the road ahead?
Well, I mean, part of this is really looking at it. Each of us has our own way in dealing with it. And so, I have another group of friends who get together and they spend time and they talk about things, right? But I've noticed something interesting. It's not just talking now, it's talking and then action. What do we want to do? And I think sometimes to relieve stress, we feel we have to do something. Sometimes in this situation where we feel powerless, there's some things that we have to do. And so we take an action. Now, what's healthy action to take? See, this is the thing. What is that action we could take? I'm going to give you an example. I don't really, I wasn't up all night watching the election, although I have a group I work with, they were up all night. So I got my first text at like 4 a.m, right? But I start to look at different things after the election. For example, my mom was born in the Carolinas. So I always like to look, how did mom's passed, but how did mom's neighborhood do? And I started to look in North Carolina. And I said to Linda, I said, there's really an anomaly here in the vote counts. So Linda's first reaction to me was, oh my God, Pat, you're like obsessing over the election. And I was like, no, I'm not obsessing. I noticed this statistical anomaly in North Carolina. And so then I went further and I looked at the statistical anomaly between the counties. And I could have let it drop there, but I couldn't. And so what do? If you see something and you want to be active in it, there are processes and ways you can do it. So now for me, I can't let it drop. So I have myself and one other member just calling our senators, calling people and say, are you looking at this anomaly? Now, how long do you do that before you realize nobody's picking up the phone? Nobody really cares. But for myself and this other young person, this was very important. And I find that not always does action relieve stress, but sometimes, and I would love for you to comment on this because you've been a school counselor, you've been a speaker,
Mm-hmm.
inaction can cause you to ruminate. What do you think? about those
Yes, and
two things.
yes, I think it's such an important, it's a really good question. Like, when does action like feel good, and when does action like you're doing something and then it like kind of takes from you, right? It like doesn't serve you anymore. But I love the idea of like the things that you mentioned with taking action. The first part of that is the connecting to people that are feel the same way, that are like-minded, that like make you feel less alone. So that connection to another person, and then deciding to take action to do something towards one of your goals. And to me, there's power in that, because even if, like you said, when do you realize if no one's picking up the phone or calling you back, or how far do you take it? Part of me feels like the action itself is the thing. The action itself is the thing, like the power of connecting with other people, and then putting your voice out into the world, saying your truth, doing something you feel to be matching your values or your ethics or your morals. And that's the part that I think is so valuable. When again, it's a balancing act, though. What you said is like, some of us throw ourselves into action and we haven't processed our emotions, and then sometimes also we throw ourselves into action, and the only way we're going to be satisfied is if we achieve the goal. And this is kind of, I would relate this to, when you exercise to exercise, it feels good in the moment, right? But then you can't always be like, is exercise, like if you were losing weight and you did exercise to lose weight and you hadn't reached your goal weight yet, would you stop exercising and be like, well, it hasn't happened yet, or hasn't happened quick enough, or hasn't happened the way I thought? The goal of exercise is still there,
Yeah.
whether or not you reached your goal of losing weight. And that's why sometimes our goal of action is there, regardless of like if and moment how we achieve it. Like doing the thing feels good. So again, I encourage you to think about the balance between that, like, am I throwing to myself an action that feels good and purposeful? And then, but at what point might I also need to understand, like, whether or not I get what I'm going for? Like,
Exactly.
how does
Exactly.
that connect with my, again, my values?
Exactly.
How much energy do I get from it? Who am I connecting with because of it? The other kind of tangible things that come even if you didn't reach your goal.
And I think these are the choices we have to make as we move forward now in the weeks and the months to come. There are going to be, when it comes to this election, it's not overnight that each state validates its election results. It takes time. And so this is a process we're in. And believe it or not, there's an emotional level to this throughout now, not just knowing what the results are, but how are you going to stay mentally sharp and healthy over the next 2 months?
Oh, definitely. And that's why I said, what now? Because part of it's like, how do I safeguard my mental health for the road ahead? How do other people safeguard their mental health? Because we have jobs, families, lives, things that are happening. And it's important to recognize, though, this, like, as a country, we've just been through the election cycle. Then we got the election results. Then we're thinking about what's next, with the inauguration, and how things are going to change. Things we don't even know yet, but can think about, we're probably going to change. And so there's, to me, the roller coaster of all those emotions are really taking a toll mentally.
Yep.
So part of what I think is so valuable to think about safeguarding your mental health is vital. And that might mean having what I call like doing an audit of yourself. Like, okay, what things ramp me up? What things calm me down? What things tend to help me get through my day? What kind of things derail me? What things do I have absolute control over? What things do I not? And like, I need to like let go of some of that need to control. So part of that is when you do an audit, I would say it's a really good time to think, like, when am I feeling stable? When am I feeling seen? What kind of emotions have I need to express? And then you might think, what kind of boundaries do I need to set around? A lot of people will need to take a break from social media, potentially the news for a bit, potentially other people in their lives for a bit. But I don't want this to be about a thing like, now you're dead to me because I think of who you voted for, like one way or another. And because
Well, that's what's happening though. I mean,
we gotta find a way
yeah.
to come together, because that is, but right now you might need to set a boundary, like, I don't want to talk about this right now, or right now these people aren't great for me to be around, because I feel, and it is happening. And that's the part of like, what now? People in our communities, like, it's kind of like we're raising a suspicious eye, like, who are you for, who are you not for? And that part does, humans are meant to connect. Humans are meant to like build trust. Humans are meant to have relationships. Humans are meant to help each other. And so in the face of what seems like, oh no, that's not true, we know from human existence, that's how human beings have gotten this far, working together, working things out, being together in community, expressing themselves, figuring out better ways to do things. And we can't do it by ourselves, and we will not be successful moving forward if we separate. So that's why, like in this moment, like you said, short term, some of the boundaries we need to set to safeguard our mental health, I think, are good for the journey ahead. But like, again, I like to hold the long game in one hand and the moment in the other. And I feel like, again, what doing an audit, what helps and what doesn't. And sometimes if you even say, I don't know how long I want to do this for, but maybe like for me, getting off social media completely for a week has been very helpful.
Yeah.
And
I
thinking
mean,
like when
okay.
I in
Did
my
you do
car,
that? Are you actually saying you did that, Kari?
yeah, I did it.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah,
because I
yeah,
just had to do it. I was like, I'm not like I can't. I'm not really able to siphon all this information like the way I normally do, and it's too much mental stress and 100 opinions from all kinds of places. And so I just said, this is something I can control. And nothing's going on right now that in social media world that needs my immediate attention. I'm gonna just take a break, and I'm not gonna announce it or do it. I'm announcing it now, I guess. But I'm like, I'm just stopping that because it's not, I'm
yeah.
safeguarding my mental health. And I also have Thanksgiving's coming up, and there's
Oh my
some
gosh, we have to help
potentially
people prepare
oh,
for
there's some potentially
Thanksgiving.
things we need to like,
Yeah,
do we have family?
yeah,
How are our family gatherings going to go? Do we need to put some kind of boundaries on what we will and won't talk
yeah,
about? And having some ways for people to say,
yeah,
hey, I think today would go better if we didn't talk about the election, or I'm not in a place I can talk about this right now. I'd really like to focus on talking about Thanksgiving or your new job or the last trip you did, or something, like redirecting, because sometimes we're just not able in the moment, and it's gonna derail what we're really trying to do. And so
I have some guy that created a pen, like a pen, like you put on, you know what I'm saying?
yeah,
Yeah, like
like a button.
a button. Thank you. So sorry. A button that he's getting for his family for Thanksgiving. And I'm saying like, wait a minute, Joe, by the very nature that you're
What
getting
does the
that button,
button say?
uh, no politics on Turkey Day, something
Hmm.
like that. He hasn't quite figured it out, right? But something like that. And I'm like, I know we don't want to, but inevitably somebody has too many beers and there you go. But let's talk about focus for a minute, because that's part of what we wanted to talk about today. You know, we all look at things differently. I noticed an anomaly in numbers, and myself and another young woman is calling because there's an anomaly in numbers for me that don't make sense. I'm not a political, what do you call me, pundit? But I am a pretty good dang statistician. And so the anomaly I mentioned to Linda, and of course now I know I cannot mention it to my close friends or people because they think I'm obsessed. I'm not obsessed. I have a question. And the question I have is simple one. I don't understand how 130,000 people in one state vote 130,000 more votes for presidency than governor in a very significant gubernatorial race. The total numbers between count all the people that vote for the president and all the people that voted for the governor. How is it that 130,000, this is just in one state, and I'm finding the pattern in many states. How is it 130,000 people? Now, this is in my mama's state. Now, I know my mama. My mama would have never voted for the president and not voted for the governor. Even if she hated everybody, she'd have put a vote for that governor down there. And so this is something I'm curious about. I don't understand it. Maybe, Kari, what it is, it's a normal pattern that literally vote, more people vote for president and ignore their governor. common sense wise, it doesn't make sense to me. But I don't represent the world. So what am I doing? Let's talk about this for the election. I want to talk about this to people. I think this is so important. I don't know if everybody's like me or everybody's like you,
Or not.
but I walked away I didn't watch it all night long. I was surprised, and now I'm even more surprised on the anomalies. I just looked at Arizona and the same pattern. But maybe that's correct. Maybe hundreds of thousands of people more care about the presidency and don't bother voting locally. I'm surprised because I think we get the same ticket. And so you would have had to consciously just vote for president and ignore governor, Senate. Arizona, you would have had to ignore senator vote, which I don't think makes any sense to me. So this is me now and my friend who I've hired. We're calling people and saying, can somebody explain it to me like I'm a fourth grader? Maybe that's not your thing. But what will it take for each of you? And I'm not doing it out of a place of I'm angry or that. I just stumbled upon this looking at where my mom was born. I'm not kidding. I just stumbled upon it. How do I not do something about something like that I found? See, this is the other part of it. Each of us now can be called to do something different.
Mhm.
How about creating a ceremonial circle and bringing people together, like my mentor, Sardonia Cahill done? How she did a circle at Chernobyl. What would it take for us to come together? It doesn't mean you're not still politically active. It doesn't mean you don't care in the initiatives in your state. But are we going to allow ourselves to have an emotional degradation of our mental state over something we may not be able to change right now? You see what I mean?
Oh yeah, and what you're bringing up is like you're bringing up your own personal experience right now. So this is really intense for you, like noticing the anomaly, wanting to do something about it, having a question, and then somebody saying, "Oh, you're obsessed," or "Let it go," or "It's not that big a deal," and you're like, "No, I'm not. I'm really curious, and I want to know, and I should want to know." And part of that, I think, is fueled by your anger because if it's not fair, a lot of us want to think, "What's fair? What's right? What's good?" And a lot of us will have to use our anger as our fuel to move forward in ways that feel like I want to know, I want to pursue this, I want to understand this better, I want this transparency. And so to me, like hooking yourself into something that you care about, that's productive for you, and that is, and to me, like saying like this is a valid question that I want to explore, and then you have to say at what point this is the one time when things get dangerous. Does it interfere with my ability to like live my life, have other conversations, put it in its essentially box? Like some people don't believe in compartmentalization, but I sometimes think it's very helpful to be like, I'm fired up about this and I still have to cook dinner tonight. I'm
Yeah.
worried about the future and I still gotta like do laundry or whatever, you know what I mean? Like there's two things can be true at once. And I think honoring the complexity of our human emotions, especially because not everyone
Yeah.
agrees. Like when we go through the world, this is a very human thing. We think everyone thinks and believes like us. We think everyone should have the same kind of filter as us, has the same, we assume a lot. And that's why it's going to be especially hard now because we've assumed wrong about a lot of people. The whole idea of too, when you think about how's the country going to go or what's going to happen, and then it doesn't go that way. To me, it also we have to wrap our minds around like our neighbors, the fellow people in our city, other people like don't think the exact same way. And the real job now is like, how do we come together during this time with our opinions, with our anger, with our frustrations, with the need for civil discourse and debate? How do we come forward without demonizing us, them, and then to make the divide even further? And also, how do we protect though against people that want to take away fundamental human rights of other human beings that live in this country. And so then we have to juxtapose that with what we're fighting for, how we feel about it, what our values are, recognizing other people's perspectives. So do you see why it's so paramount that our mental health is stable?
Yes.
Because it's a
Yes.
big load. And
Yes.
part of it is, to me, bringing this up is what next? There's not like a, like, do these things and you'll be great. I did write up 6 ideas.
Good.
That will be helpful. But I think the journey for everyone is going to be, what's your journey? What's my journey? And can we keep these lines of conversation open? Can we keep the communication
Right.
going? Can we humanize the situation? And can we have empathy? And can we do all the human things we're supposed to have around this, so that we can connect versus disconnect, so we can make progress versus go back, so we can,
Exactly.
all those things.
Yeah. Let's take a short break, because when we come back, I want to know the things that we can do. And the reason that this is so important is, I just happen to be me. I just happened to hop over and take a look at my mama's birth state, and something didn't make sense to me. Just because it doesn't make sense to me doesn't mean it's not right. So this is me now, just fascinated with the numbers. It's like me looking and saying, well, what did they do in my state? Are the numbers of the vote for the president person that you voted for here in my state, how did those numbers match to the senator? So in my state, Bob Ferguson won around 2 million something, and Maria Cantwell around 2 million. So senator to president numbers make sense. There's not this strange anomaly. So I decided I have got a very busy work week this week, because we're launching our technology. There's just a lot of things. But I also feel like there's a lot for all of us to learn. When we come back, what are the lessons learned? And how do we acknowledge and care for people that have a different opinion than what we have? How do we come together? I'm sitting next to my table tennis friend yesterday, and she grabs me and she says, I want you to look at this. And what I heard from her shocked me, but I learned something. Let's take a short break. When we come back, more with Kari Knutson. Kari, what's the best way for people to find out about you? Give us a hot hit here.
They can find me at knutsonspeaks.com, KNUTSON speaks.com. That has all my contact info and how to book me for speaking and presentations and coaching and whatever else I can be helpful with.
And when we come back, we're going to share some tips, but I want to share this thing I discovered as I looked at my friend in my little ping pong Saturday. And here I thought X, and what I saw was Y. And I stepped back and I said, girlfriend, you just learned something super important. Let's take a short break. I'll be right back. Get Big Out Loud with Kari Knutson, and I'm Dr. Pat. Kari picked the most interesting 2-word episode title that I've seen in a long time. What now? What? Kari, before we begin, let's just stop for a minute, because I know that you are on a pathway. You are out in the world more than you've ever been. It's almost as if COVID almost didn't exist. I say that tongue in cheek. It really did exist. But you're out in the world and you're teaching. We're on the verge of uploading our technology. It's just, we're having this what's now stuff because things may bother us. But you and I know we can help other people rise up again, but we have to do it by example, right? We have to do it by showing up. How do people find out about you, and what are you doing to support people during these times? Because there's a lot of them. My phone was like my poor phone was so hot from text messages the other day. But what are you doing? How do people find out about you?
Yeah, well, I think that's why part of this podcast is so interesting to me, to be able to put stuff out, to be like, okay, what now? And like, can we support each other through it? And can I be a voice that is helpful in all of the voices that have been put out there, all of the people with their opinions and stuff? Part of it is how can we support people sorting things out, teasing things out? And my work at Knutson Speaks, all around training, coaching, consulting, is around how we use our emotional intelligence to really optimize how we show up, and how even the title of the show, The Complex, Funny, and Beautiful Ride of Life, with really complex things deserve some attention. And I think even what I could offer is like, can we pay attention to this for a bit? Can we talk about how it feels? Can we create some spaces for people, well, I want to say on both sides or in the middle, to come together? Because I think when I speak to a group, I have to recognize in the audience there are so many people with
Yeah.
diverse experiences, and our humanity is what I'm focused on. Our humanity, not our political stripes. And that part of our humanity is around like how we treat each other, how we come together, how we solve conflicts, how we have better workspaces,
Yeah.
and how we feel better as human beings. Because when I show up and I got myself together, when I show up, talk to you or someone else, it matters.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, listen, I work with a group of young people. Let me just call them young people. But this whole cancel culture is really happening. I can't tell you how many calls I get from young people that are trying to stay clean and sober, but they go back to college and they raise their hand and they start to say something, and immediately the entire campus is anti them for speaking their voice. And I have to tell you, that's the anomaly for me, is when did we get to the point where we can't speak? Now, what does this lead to? Let's talk about this. You're connecting with others. You're focusing on what you can control. Okay, I want to throw something out here. I don't usually talk about this, but I am going to talk about this for a moment. My acquaintance, not a friend, I live in Washington State. What people don't know about my state is we're a gun carrying state, right? We're blue, but we carry guns, right? A lot of hunting, a lot of, it's that kind of place. So most of the time you hear about Texas and and I know everybody's got a gun in Texas because I've been to Texas, but this is a little unusual. So I'm listening to people, and after about 6 calls, Kari, I sat there and I said, I just had 6 calls with 6 women. 4 of the 6 are going to get guns. Now, as a coach, you just sometimes listen. But I gave them an assignment. I said, in your decision to go get a gun, and I'm not anti-gun, I come from a police family, and what I do in my personal life, whether I have a gun or not gun, is up to me. But before you go purchase an armed weapon, check your heart. And this is what we're talking about today. Check where you are emotionally. If you're scared and you feel that that is a way to take care of yourself. Now, look, my ping pong story. I'm sitting next to this was so enlightening for me. I honestly, I think, I know you don't have your head like in the sand, but I think sometimes maybe I do. I'm such an idealist, right? In so many ways. So I'm sitting next to my table tennis friend, and I thought, oh, most of the people here, blue state, right? No, my friend pulls up her phone and says, look at the stock market. That's why I voted for Mr. Trump. Stock market. And I realized the woman I am today is not the woman that I was when I was in my 50s. Because the woman in my 50s would have clearly had a focus on priority on money and security. And let's just make sure we understand that. People are focusing on the things they feel they can control. And so many of the decisions we make today are in a world where my financial security is up in the air right now. I'm telling you, there's like a little mojo group forming about Medicare and Social Security. I can't wait, to see people 65 and over start to march like they're saying they want to about something that's not even done yet. But we need to get emotionally intact because we're starting to make some interesting decisions. What do you think?
Oh yeah, then that's the whole goal. Like, how do we get emotionally centered so that we can handle what's ahead? And we know there's going to be something ahead, we just don't know what it is, right? And again, for repairing our communities, our families, our institutions, whatever we're going to talk about. Like, we got it, the road ahead, it's definitely out there, right? And so that anxiety that comes right now from like, what now, is a lot of that, oh no, what's going to happen? And so keeping ourselves mentally safe, healthy, like, and I think propagating or building up our mental health is going to be important. And that's why, let me read through my list of 6 things that I put together as a way just to help us think about that, because I feel like just having some kind of, am I doing these things? Could these things help me? Could I find some relief from this one way or another? Because I do think it's valuable when you think about, if you're in a heightened state of anxiety all the time, like what that does to your nervous system. If you're in a heightened state of worry all the time, what that does. And that's not your highest good, to be a stressed out, worried person, because again, the world needs us to be doing things and to show up fully engaged and focused. And that's why I think it is so valuable to have conversations like this, even if it's not like, this is the answer. There's a couple, like, in used to watch a show called Mandalorian, he goes, this is the way.
Yeah.
I don't think one person knows the way, but I think there are some ideas forward. So that's why I want to share some of my like 6 ideas for potentially keep
Let's
on
go
the
through
road
them.
that safeguards our
Yeah.
mental
Yeah.
capacity.
Yeah. Take us through them, in the,
Okay, I pulled them up here.
go
And I
for
already
it.
talked about some of them. So
All right.
the first one is start by acknowledging all of your emotions, not judging. Notice I said acknowledge your emotions, not judge your emotions. So all of the emotions that come up have their fair time to like just come up, because you don't want to bottle them away. You don't want to negate them. You don't want to judge them, because again, they will just come up in another way. So like the acknowledging emotions for what they are is the first step. And then connecting with others is so vital, because at a time like this, really a lot of us want to isolate, myself included. Like, I'll just go into my own thing, I'll just do my own stuff, I'll just deal with my stuff. But the part of this, can we connect with other people who see us, who understand us, who we, again, that human need for connection is so strong. Are we connecting with other people that can help us through this? Yes, there are lots of people that it can help us. And also, which relationships benefit your mental health right now? Like seek out the relationships that benefit your mental health, that when you feel good being with people that feel supported, seek those out. We also talked about this, focusing on what you can control versus what you can't. And for a lot of us right now, that's going to be our news consumption, how much we doom scroll before bed or when we wake up, how we put boundaries on potential conversations we're not ready to have. I'm not saying we won't ever have them, but sometimes you're like, right now is not the ideal time to have this conversation, which again, the holidays are coming up and we gotta like, do I want to preserve these family relationships or not? Do I want to, and do I need some boundaries in order to do that? Maybe now's a good time to start thinking about that. Like, what boundaries will help? Also, one thing I just want to say around control, sometimes doing something you can control like makes you feel certain of something. So like, if I can't control like repotting, I know this is simple, but I had to repot a plant that needed a new thing, and I was so glad I got the pot, I got the soil, I took the time to repot it, I'm checking on it, it looks so good, and I thought, oh, I could control that. And that actually makes me feel good. Like I did that thing, or like, so sometimes the small things, the things we can control, steady us, make us feel good. So like that those little things sometimes add up to what we can do. Um then I want to say the other thing I was saying is sometimes when we're in situations where we notice ourselves changing or shifting, or like, and this is a big emotional lift for a lot of people, sometimes we need to seek professional help. Sometimes we're like, if I'm ruminating on this, if I'm thinking all the time, if I have a lot of heavy, deep, or intense emotions that aren't seeming to shift or change or fade, or that are affecting my ability to lead my life in the way I want to, sometimes that seeking support is actually professional help. And some of us are going to need to talk to professionals about this to figure out how can I show up? And also we need a neutral space to do it, because sometimes our friends, it's like an echo chamber. Sometimes people who disagree with us, it's so much emotional energy to be with them, that seeking therapy it's a beautiful neutral space.
Yeah, I
To
agree.
work some of this stuff out.
I agree. I mean, for those people out there that think that, oh, this is going to pass, this may not pass. And for many people that really didn't have a good time the last 4 years, they're going through a form of post-traumatic stress disorder in their own way. But you've got to reach out for help. Those of you that are part of a Christian community, go to reach out to your pastors. Those of you that are particular religion, go talk to your rabbi. If you're part of any other spiritual group, talk to your group. If you're not part of them, you'll find it, because holding this stuff in, that is worse. But don't act out, because that's what we need to talk about here too. It's the acting out part that concerns me.
Well, and that whole acting out, like people will have, our anger will take different forms. And when you think about what constructive anger looks like versus what destructive anger looks like, it's important to like think about the two and what's fueling you. Can your anger be your energy, and are you using it, or is it destroying you from the inside? So like that's what you have to ask yourself, like, it's my mental health is the most important thing to safeguard. So how do I want to do that and use my emotions as fuel in positive ways? But you're right, like, and this is why it's hard, because a lot of things are coming up right now around what's fair, what's right, what's true, what's not, and even the moral values of people in leadership. Do you have to have a moral compass or ethics, or should you be able to lie or tell the truth? Like, what are we saying about people in the highest office, and then telling children? And then some of us are gonna be like, so it's okay for this person to lie, but it's not okay for you to lie. And that level of unfairness is going to come up for people. But what's also like, I had rights and then you took them away. That level of unfairness is going to come up. I as a woman, like even having Roe v. Wade, growing up and then having two daughters now that won't have the same rights, that feels unfair. And so again, that's my personal thing. And again, it's hard to come on a show and do that, because you're like, oh, now it's personal. Oh, it's professional. The personal is professional. Everything we bring to situations, and navigating that, because a lot of things are going to come up. And that's why what next to me, I think I'll be saying that for a while now. What next? And maybe what next in this moment? What next for today? What next right now? But you cannot allow the bigness of this, I think, to take away from finding some place to be like, how am I going to safeguard my mental health for the journey? Because I am worthy, I'm important, I need to be here for it, and I need to add my voice, and I need to be prepared, and I don't want it eating me up. I don't want to walk around being angry and bitter, and I don't want to I don't want to walk around and be more divisive than already is. I want to bring people together. I don't want to bring them apart.
Exactly.
And I'm going to do that. Safeguarding mental health is the very first thing. That's why I wanted to talk about this today, because I think for our listeners, that is to me of the utmost. It's a question of the moment for me.
I look at different things, and I look at how people show. I want to talk about Whoopi Goldberg for a minute, but I don't want to talk about her on The View. She's doing something extraordinary. I don't know if it has to do with an election or whatever it has to do with, but I am going to give Caitlin Clark always credit for this, because before Caitlin Clark, we're a little lukewarm on women's sports. Whoopi just announces, because there's action that you can take, action for the greater good of the world. That's what we're talking about here today. The fact that I want to know why the numbers are different is simply a question. But somebody like Whoopi is announcing the launch of an all-women sports network. If women are playing sports, she's going to show it. Like what? What? Just like we're launching an all-women's channel. And I thought for a minute, when we came out with the order of the channels we were going to launch, I thought, our Epic Women channel was one of the first, and people are like, why are you doing that? Why don't you launch the political channel or the health channel? And then I realized that's a channel that we have been asked for 4 years now by women to do first. We're going to do it first. And what I realize is we all can take an action. You have to find out what you support. But we just have to try to come together. There was an article by Joy Reid that came out where the article said something like Black women are not going to really take on the vote anymore because we've been betrayed by our white sisters. And I saw that and I thought, wow, how do those numbers look? See, that's not the way to come together. So I'm going to email and I'm going to say, why don't we form a circle? Why don't we get a circle of Black women and white women together, or people of color, shall I say, and white women together? Why don't we form a ceremonial circle like Sidonia would have formed, and we could do it online? Why don't we talk to each other? Am I an idealist? Yeah. But with technology, why aren't we doing more of that there, Miss Carrie?
Yeah, well, and that thing is, again, you're reaching back to like, why aren't we trying to find our humanity instead of what divides us, what unites us? And in order to get through things, we got to come together as humans. And I often think you see this in kids a lot. They're just playing and engaging, and their language is the language of play. And they don't ask each other, what do you do for a living? How much money do you make? What's your political candidate? And they just play, right? They just engage with each other. And sure, they have differences of opinions on things, but I feel like as adults, we start off the relationship with like, what do you believe? How much money did you make? What do you work for? Who did you vote for? And then we find ways to disconnect from people instead of engage. And part of this is if we're going to talk to people about things we care about or are passionate, or get them to understand different viewpoints and have us understand different viewpoints, we have to come together instead of coming apart. And in order to come together, though, we have to have mental space to do that. You can't just be like, oh, come together. It's okay. Like, deal with your anger and then come together. Because a lot of we need, that's why I'm like, we have to deal with our anger first. We have to deal with our emotions first. We have to deal with our feelings first. We have to manage our personal relationship, and then our very immediate relationships, and then our work relationships, and then our community, and then our global. And it's work to do that. But the goal, again, is coming together versus splitting apart. And I want to know, the thing is too, if I'm curious and I want to be more of an understanding person and get my head around things and fight for things that matter, part of that is like I have to have some brain space that's not so dedicated to being overwhelmed, frightened, and essentially in a state of anxiety, that I can do that. And you can't have, it's very small to me, the brain space that we have for that. So we have to protect it.
Well, and part of this too, I want to get back to how we started with this. Not all of this is illusionary fear. In my community and in communities that I'm connected with in the Midwest, so far there's been 4 attacks on transgender people. Brutal attacks. You don't read about them in the headlines. My prayer is that we can disagree in a nonviolent way and keep a door open. But to start beating each other up over who we are or who we are becoming or who we want to be in the world, that is not a place of love. That is certainly not a place that we have been born from. And today, by you opening up the door and asking, what now? This is where we have to choose a higher road, don't you think?
We do, because we're going to see that, just what you said. And that's a likely outcome of when we're not essentially able to talk in any other way than through violence and through fear and through propagation of fear and through otherness, everything that we're trying to work against. And that's what will happen if we cannot, again, find ways, to me, to say like, we got to have some difficult conversations, have some massive disagreements. And how do we do that in a human way that doesn't result in violence or fear, that results in understanding and growth, and actually, too, again, our humanness should be at the center of this, our human rights, our human connections, what makes us human, how we all, like, finding ways to help us come together is going to be vital. And then again, you can't do that if you yourself are fractioned.
I agree. Kari, thank you so much. Give out that website again so people can follow you around.
Knutson Speaks. Is my where to find me. And again, I want to thank anyone who's listening today. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this and be part of a conversation with no direct, like, here's how to do it, or here's how to feel it. But I hope to add my voice into the fray, to be helpful, to be supportive, and to also let people know they're not alone in this, and the struggling with our emotions it's an important struggle to have, and my goal is to make this somewhat more manageable experience.
Thank you. And I want to give a message out there for all of you that are listening in the recovery community. This is not worth a drink. This is not worth using. This is not worth giving up your sobriety. This is not worth, stepping away from all the things that are giving your life back. We will find a way together, and you'll start to see that in some of the shows we're doing. For many of you out there in the world, please pay attention to what Kari said. Stress gets more stress, and I'm sure you don't want that in your life. We'll see you next time.
You have been listening to Get Big Out Loud Radio, where we explore the complex, funny, and beautiful ride of life with me, Kari Knutson, joining Dr. Pat live every second Monday at 10 a.m. Pacific on TransformationTalkRadio.com. I will help you to know which thoughts are keeping you small in order for you to get big. Get big and live your life out loud. For more information, visit KnutsonSpeaks.com.